On the record, in the notice of noncompliance and order requiring action involving the property owner Benjamin F. Pomeroy of 1505 Eisenhower Drive in LaPorte, Indiana, 46350. This is the administrative hearing involving the order to vacate that was issued to Mr. Pomeroy. What date?
January 24th of 2024.
Okay. So I will turn it over to Mr. Novak on behalf of the City of LaPorte.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Worthley. So I'll give a little bit of background, and then I will ultimately call Jeff Batchelor, who's our Director of Code Enforcement. So we're here today on a notice of noncompliance and order requiring action, which stems out of the city's chronic nuisance property ordinance. Essentially, the city has an ordinance that if there's so many code violations or calls for service at a property, that once the owner is notified, it can be designated a chronic nuisance property or a chronic activity property. The city's condemnation statute under 10-267 talks about different properties that can in fact be condemned. One of which is 10-267 sub 4, and that's one that has been declared a chronic nuisance property by having 5 police response call over a 6-month period. So the condemnation order was entered here on December 13th of 2023, gave the owner 10 days to vacate. He did not. We're now proceeding under the Indiana unsafe building law, which the city has adopted, which allows us to bring these administrative hearings and to ask that you would affirm our order to require him to vacate. So at this time, I would like to call Jeff Batchelor to testify. If you could raise your right hand, Jeff.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So Jeff, if you could state your name for the record and your position with the City of LaPorte.
Jeffrey Batchelor, Director of Code Enforcement.
And I kind of laid the foundation for why we're here, but if you could just historically give a little bit of context as to the issues that the city has had with this property.
Yeah, it started, this has been going on for a long time. We went to them, it was July 31st, and actually talked to them about the chronic nuisance, gave them the paperwork, said if there was any other violations that they would take and get, start the process, and that would be the same thing that Anthony just talked about. I ended up having open heart surgery, so I was gone for a few months. So instead of just giving him the 5 violations, he ended up getting 12 violations during this period of time. And they range from domestic to disturbances, several warrants, suspicious person, 911 hang up, overdose, and another server warrant. So we had a lot of activity going on. We've tried to talk to them, and we just can't get nowhere with them. The place is still got junk vehicles out in front of it, behind the house. He just doesn't want to clean it up.
And Jeff, is the idea behind the chronic nuisance property ordinance that all of these calls for services ultimately divert the resources of the city towards this property? Is that correct?
Yeah, because we want the police out doing other things rather than worrying about the residents. And then we also have the neighbors that's got to deal with all the stuff that's going on in the neighborhood. He would drive through their yards to go to his backyard. He's a total disruption to the whole neighborhood. It's just not his place. He's got broken windows in his house that hasn't been fixed for ages. He just has constantly been a problem.
And Jeff, so the condemnation order was entered December 13th, meaning the property was already a chronic nuisance property at that time. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you have provided to us an additional document which shows additional calls for services beyond December 13th. Is that correct?
Yes, that's he had a burning violation on December 14th. ordinance violation. That's when we went out there and served him the paperwork to see if he was gone after we condemned it. And of course, he was still there. On January 3rd of 2024, they followed up. The 5th, they followed up again. And then on February 11th, there was another disturbance at that location again.
And I also have it here, an affidavit of service that Phil Goshrowski served this order requiring action to Mr. Pomeroy's address on January 24th of 2024. So even after this property was condemned, even after it was designated and condemned and he was notified, there are still additional calls at this property. Is that correct?
Correct.
And outside of the calls for services, are there other code violations at this property with respect to debris or junk or abandoned vehicles? Or what's the nature of the property look like on the outside?
Yeah, there's numerous cars that's had problems with them, with hoods up, the flat tires, they don't run, they've got no license plates that's on there, or the license plates are out of date. There's a car sitting right now behind the house that's on a little cement area that the hood's up on. There's just numerous violations with that. Like I said, the windows are broke out in the house. And when we were over there December 26th, he had the cars parked in the street and they were working on them. I'm like, you can't work on cars in the street. And they promised me that they would take and get them up in the yard or in the driveway and they would fix them within a couple days. And we're going on almost 2 months.
And Jeff, you've given me here a packet of pictures that show the current condition of the property. Is that okay?
Yes.
Or is that correct?
Yes.
And you want that submitted into evidence?
Yes.
Correct. You know, I know some of the things that you've said. Have you had any interactions with the owner himself?
Yes.
And generally, what are the nature of those interactions or his disposition when you bring up these issues?
Very unprofessional. Basically cusses me out the whole time, tells me to do specific things to him, and just said he's not gonna do it. We don't have the authority to make him do it. It's basically his property.
It's my understanding that Jeff, in addition to the issues that the city is having, it seems like adjoining owners also share in the concerns of this neighbor and are certainly, you know, annoyed and fed up with this. Is this correct?
Yes.
And I know some of these people are here. Is that correct? And then you also have a letter from another property owner who just couldn't be here, Jeffrey Strife, maybe? S-T-R-U-Y-F, is that correct?
Right.
At 1510 Eisenhower?
Yep.
And you want that submitted into the record as well?
Correct.
Jeff, before I maybe turn it over to some of these property owners just to give their ultimate issues here, what we're asking for today is that the order be affirmed because you're seeking that he vacate the property, is that correct?
Correct.
Give us an idea of what that looks like when he vacates. Is it something you want him to be vacated in perpetuity or just a period of time in which he can correct things? What does that look like?
I mean, he's the homeowner. In an ideal world, he pays his fines that he takes in orders. We would vacate him out of the building, and then because he's gonna be gone, there should be no other violations that goes on. And then we would look at it again in 90 days. If there's nothing that's happened in that stuff, he's paid what he has to pay, then we would let him come back into the building, back into his house. But it would be that we would watch him, make sure that we're not having the same problems again, because I don't want to start the whole process all over again. So if he has another violation, then we just go from here and go through that stuff.
So it's not a situation where the city's actually taking the property or prohibiting him from living or owning it. It's just making sure that there's a period of time in which the violations end and hopefully continue on.
Correct. And everybody in the home neighborhood deserves that be at peace, not having to go through everything that he's going through. I mean, it's just not fair. And that's like, if everybody did that in every neighborhood, we'd have all kinds of problems there.
Sure. Anything else to add, Jeff? Otherwise, I know that there's a couple neighbors that wanted to speak in support of the city's request.
No, I think one of the big things is, I hate doing this. This is the last case alternative and that stuff. He's had a chance to take his stuff up and take responsibility, and he hasn't done it. So, if he doesn't take what they can do this, we will 100% do this. And there's other people that said the exact same thing happened. But people need to be held accountable for their actions.
Sure. Any questions for Jeff specifically?
Is this vehicle still parked out front?
No, that's the one they push back up and see the driveway.
I would imagine the vehicles you're referring to are still there, still in the driveway,
The one that's,
so they're not on the street.
no,
Is there any in the grass?
no, the one that's in the back, if you look at I think the last picture is the one that's in the back, it's on cement, but it's had a patio, and it's in there, and it's, the hood's up.
And it's been like that for a while.
Yes.
It looks like some spare tires and just full of trash cans. So if it's okay, Mark, if any of the neighbors wanna step up to this podium, if we do in fact wanna speak, no obligation to do so. If you could step to the podium and state your, name and address and whatever you'd like to say.
William Beasley, 432 Southmore Road, and my house is, his house is directly behind my house, so we have the view. And what we're really concerned about, all of the stuff that's always up on the side, is they have fires. They've had, even since the first of the year, they've had 3 fires, I believe. We call the fire department every time we see it. One fire they had back in late November, in fact, right around Thanksgiving, they were burning furniture. We came home and saw it, flames were shooting sky high, this is during the day. And called the fire department, they came, put it out. They left, they started it up again. I mean, you know, it's just no sense at all. Then the other thing we see is they do most of their work at night. They'll come down up from the front of the house, and there's sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6 people, we don't know how many, but they all have the headlights on, and they're walking around, you see these lights shining all around. They go into what we call the hole, which is underneath the house, where they have tons of stuff stored. I mean, I've got pictures of when they took it all out of there to sort through it, and they took a good pile and a bad pile, and sure enough, after they got done doing that, they started a fire. Called the fire department. We're just concerned with what we're breathing and whatever else is breathing, and it's been a terrible nuisance. I could go on and tell you stories from years ago. He just had no regard for anybody. And I'm a veteran. He loved the fact that when he found out I was a Vietnam veteran, he'd throw M80s out the back window, scare the heck out of me until I got over that. But he'd just do things like that. We don't need that. Okay?
Can you tell me, can you elaborate on what the hole is?
Yeah, it's underneath his garage, and it's got two doors on it, it's a storage. Okay, we call it.
Basement?
Well, it's part of
It's
the
like a
basement.
garage, it's like a garage under a
Yeah.
garage, because we
Yeah,
got
same size as the garage, right underneath it. Double doors, big double doors.
Was it intended to be
It-
a 2-story garage?
When Miller built the house many years ago, it was just a storage room, but it leaks water, and it's not, I know it's not good. And up there, it gets mildew and everything else. Then there's a basement portion on it, as I face it, to the right side. That's just our term for it.
We've been in the house and
Could you state your name?
for a
and-
graduation party for someone that was living there before.
Give your name and address.
Okay, sorry. And there's no way that you can move anything.
Name
Oh, Nancy Beasley, sorry.
and address.
432 Southmore Road. My hearing's not good, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But anyhow, you cannot move anything from inside the house down to the lower part because if any size, because I don't think I'm that big, but I had to go down like this It's so narrow that whoever, Mr. Miller built it, Troy Miller built the house, he built it so narrow that it's probably about like this, that you really can't, so they bring everything down the hill in a car or a truck and take it in that way. So then everything comes out behind us and up back up the hill by these neighbors. So that's why we see everything. We see, you know, everything that's going on. And my personal problem is when they leave, there's so much in that storage area. It's been cleared out once before because they left the doors open 2 years ago in March during snow and rain, and everything got wet and it molded and mildewed. So they pulled everything out, piled it out there, and didn't get rid of it. She got a burn barrel and started burning it up in front. So we had to call code enforcement. They told us what to do, call the fire department, all this, so we went through all that. So then she decided, well, you can have a fire pit. So there were bricks up against the back of the house. She got some bricks and made a fire pit, and she started burning. 7 o'clock at night, she'd get a big fire going, and then she'd go get water and pour it on it and walk away. She never sat down. No one ever sat down around it. Then 2 in the afternoon, because the smoke was gone, she knew we didn't want the smoke in our house. So she'd go, she'd start it up again, she'd pour water on it. That went on for weeks. We called the fire department, but they were out at American Rubber for that week for the fire at American Rubber. And we did call them a couple times or 3 times after that to come take care of her fires because she was just trying to get us back for not being able to use her burn barrel. And we did call an officer. We went to the police station and we asked the lady at the desk if we could speak to an officer because we tried to figure out how to handle this and we didn't want to do anything we shouldn't. She said, you can't, there's nobody on site. She gave us the phone number. She said, call this phone number. Someone will either talk to you on the phone or they'll come to your house. Well, a gentleman came to the house. We took him in the house to our family room, which you can see the back of their house, and told him the problem. And he said he knew them both, and he tried to go up and talk to them and get it, you know, situated out. It didn't help at all. She just kept burning. So we don't know what we're inhaling. We don't know what the neighbors are inhaling or anything. She has a real problem with burning, and I hope that if they do have to leave the house or any time they were told they cannot burn anymore in the city, because she has a real thing for standing there staring at it as she burns. She's a real hazard for burning. And I thank you all for your help.
My name is Teresa Bray, 1509 Eisenhower. We're the next door neighbors who hear the cursing and the screaming and the door slamming. Like Monday night, I called the police. Sunday night, I called the police. Monday night at 2:30, he was slamming car doors, throwing stuff up against the garage. I didn't bother to call, and many times we don't call. But one of our concerns is this. When he was incarcerated during this, whatever time it was, there was constantly people in and out of the house. They break in, or they know how to get in. And so while he's gone, if you make him go for the 90 days, what's gonna stop all these other people that are hanging around there? They are in and out of there constantly. I know there's drugs, because there was a guy that overdosed. And you see things, you know, and just what's gonna cause them, the other people, for the 90 days that he's gone, what's gonna keep them out of there? It's not so much Ben that's the problem. When he's by himself, we don't have a problem with him. We can get along with him. But when he gets the other people coming in, especially the ex-girlfriend, that's when the domestic violence and the things come in. And I have literally seen her break into the house. So, that's just our concern. My grandkids can't play outside because when he goes into raging fit, the language is unfit for children to hear. And it's a trash mess. There's constant garbage. I mean, if you drive by there today, there's garbage cans overflowing. It's just makes our neighborhood unsafe. We feel unsafe with the people going in and out all times of the day and night. we keep our doors locked constantly.
Well, that's gonna be one of the things that, once the place is condemned, nobody's allowed in the house. So if you see somebody going into the house, call the police. Okay, because we'll put signs up on the door that say the house is condemned without, if you get caught in there, you get fined. And if somebody gets caught in there, they'll trespass them off, so that they can't get in there.
They'll be in there at night.
Again,
They'll be out in there in the middle of the night.
You'll have to put locks on it.
We'll do something to secure those things.
Sure. I'll be brief. I'm Ricky Bray, I'm a husband. In those pictures, our house, our bedroom window is right next to the garage. So I cannot tell you the horror stories. And it's sad that we're here because he's had every opportunity to correct. And I offered to help, tear trash off. When we moved in that neighborhood 18 years ago, nothing like that. It's brought down our area, it's brought it down into an area that we're not pleased with, and you have company come, and you got, someone out there, and it's like she said, we tried to be nice to Ben, we tried to help Ben, but you will have to put padlocks on that, because when he was in jail, that was a house that was being used every night. And, we've got cameras now, because we just, I don't fear Ben, I fear the people that are around him. And I would not let my grandkids out there, and it's sad. And it's just sad that we have to get to this point. But thank y'all for bringing this to a head, because something's got to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see if Jeff has anything further. Jeff, do you have anything further to add?
Nothing but
So, Mark, so two things. Number one, the statute specifically says when we come to this hearing, you can either affirm the order, rescind the order, or modify the order if you feel it needs to be modified. In addition to affirming the order, this is 36-7-9-7. It says if you find that there's a willful failure to comply with the order, the hearing authority may impose a civil penalty on an amount not to exceed $5,000. The effective date of the civil penalty may be postponed for a reasonable period, after which the hearing authority may order the civil penalty reduced or stricken if the hearing authority is satisfied that all work necessary to fully comply with the order has been done. My thought would be in addition to asking that it be affirmed, given the interactions that Jeff has had, given the fact that the owner knows of this order and continues to have further violations, I would ask that a civil penalty be imposed. My idea here, though, is not that this is going to make the city money, because who knows if this is ever paid, but I would ask that it be imposed but stayed, possibly, so that, we can say, hey, this order was affirmed, but if you do honor it, and if you do vacate by X date, the X amount of dollars of fine will be stayed, and then it can ultimately be released if he is done. So I would leave that discretion up to you if you would be willing to do it. But in short, at a minimum, we would ask that the order of January 24th, 24 be firm, and that in your discretion impose a penalty of up to $5,000, but can be stayed until a certain time. And nothing further from us.
You're speaking of this. So the December 13th,
Condemnation order.
yes,
That condemnation order was actually entered, and that's not an issue here being appealed, or anything like that.
so was the placard placed on the door
Yeah,
after December 13th?
it's disappeared.
Yes, so I will affirm the January 24th order. I'll impose a $2,000 fine to be stricken if compliance is made within 90 days. If it's not, compliance is not made within 90 days, then
I'll get a proposed, form of order together and over to you to sign. Other than that, that's it. Thank you.